All right, welcome to the second lecture of Chapter 18, the Cold War conflict. We're going to be looking at how the Cold War is beginning to heat up in the late 1940s, early 1950s, especially in Asia. So, just a little background. If you remember from World War II, you should have probably seen this in one of the museum exhibits, but Japan is under reconstruction. The US wanted Japan to be really this Asian central point to go against communism. Okay? So really kind of launching out of Japan to fight communism in Asia. And really this reconstruction of Japan is put under the control of General MacArthur. He's the one who did a lot in the Pacific War, and he is going to help really turn Japan into a democracy and also an economic giant, really, that it is today. Uh, like I said, within a few decades, Japan becomes one of these world's strongest industrial powers because of a lot of the reconstruction that was done there. We also see during this time that Truman is reelected. In 1948, the Democrats were split, so it seemed like Truman was going to lose. He really didn't have the support of all the Democrats, but he actually gets a surprise victory in 1948 by getting a lot of the votes from farmers, workers, and blacks. This is going to be really key to his winning. He also comes up with two new programs that he wants to begin to implement in America. One is called Point 4, which offers money and aid to underdeveloped lands, really help those to become developed, again, helping uh, con- American economy, strengthening it. And you also see the Fair Deal. This is kind of his version of Roosevelt's New Deal. And we'll be looking more at that in future lectures, but just wanted you to be aware of this, the context of really what we're about to look at. So he comes up with this thing called the Fair Deal. And really, the major part of Asian communism is going to take place in China. Uh, Before World War II, there was fighting going on between the nationalists and the communists. But during World War II, they are able to kind of put their differences aside and join forces to fight against the invading Japanese army. But once World War II is over, they go back to fighting again. The U.S. tries for several years to keep peace in the region while supporting the nationalists, but this ends up failing, and China ends up going into civil war. The communists were led by a man named Mao Zedong. You may have heard of him. He's a pretty popular dude, and his rival is Chiang Kai-shek. Okay, he is the leader of the nationalists. Um, the nationalists are very militaristic, very controlling, but the Americans are going to support them because they are against the communists. And so really they're going to support whoever they can against the communists. The communists and Mao Zedong relied heavily on aid from the Soviet Union, while the nationalists relied a lot on the aid from Americans. In fact, America gives them $3 billion in aid during the late 1940s. Uh, the communists are going to attract many of the peasants with the promise of land reform, while the nationalists are going to be struggling to get support. The economy in China is failing, and so they're going to really struggle to get support from the Chinese people. You also have Mao Zedong being a very charismatic leader. They have a skilled guerrilla army, whereas the nationalists have really weak military leaders and poor morale. Really, one of the reasons that they are going to lose a lot of support is because of their very harsh, corrupt ways of doing government. And so most of China is going to side with the communists. And so basically, the Civil War lasts several years, and in the end, China becomes communist. The communists win. If you see on this map here, here's China, And the little island here off of the coast of China is known as Taiwan. This is where the nationalists are going to flee to and set up their own government. In fact, they are still there. China refuses to recognize Taiwan as a country, and there are still a lot of tension points there to this day between Taiwan and China because of the issues during the communist and nationalist problems. And basically, what happens is you see a fourth of the world population is going to now turn to communism. China's a big country, large population, and many of the Republicans in America are going to ask, who lost China? This is going to cause the Democrats to lose a lot of favor with the American people. Um, and we're going to see in a little bit too that the Korean War is not going to help their cause at all. So Democrats are going to begin losing favor after having great leaders like Roosevelt and then having Truman reelected. And this is one of the main reasons why. So, and there you go, nationalists are exiled to Taiwan. You also have the nuclear arms race going on at this point. In 1949, the Soviets explode their first atomic bomb. This happens a lot faster than the politicians in America thought it was going to happen. They thought it was going to take them at least another 5 or 8 years to get an atomic bomb. So it happens very quickly. And so Truman immediately begins the development of what is called the hydrogen bomb, which is even more powerful than the atomic bomb. Um, Einstein and Oppenheimer, who worked on the atomic bomb, both protest and say this is a bad idea. We don't like where this is headed. But by 1952, the U.S. explodes its first H-bomb on a small island atoll in the South Pacific. But a year later, the Soviets are able to also figure out how to create an H-bomb. Now, this is going to cause some problems in the United States as they go looking for spies who are leaking kind of their secrets to the Soviets and allowing them to come up with these weapons much quicker than expected. So now both countries are capable of mutual destruction. You kind of have this stalemate between the Soviets and US. If you shoot your bombs off, we'll shoot our bombs off. Okay. And this is the context that the Korean War is going to come out of. The Korean War is going to start in June 1950, but really it starts before then. There's this idea of the domino theory, this idea that China has become communist. We cannot let Korea, Vietnam, Laos, all these other countries to become communist because if we do, then communism is just going to spread like a disease. It's going to be like a domino. One's going to fall, then it's going to cause the other one to fall, and before you know it, all of Asia is going to be communist. And this is really one of the biggest fears for America. So, after World War II, Korea is separated into two countries. Japan had been ruling over Korea. And really, what you have is what you have going on in Germany. The same thing that happened in Germany is going to happen in Korea. You're going to have the Soviets come in from the north, and America is going to come in from the south. And they're going to kind of meet here at the 38th parallel latitude. And they're going to create two separate states, kind of like they did in Germany, but this time a North Korea and a South Korea, with the division being at the 38th parallel. The North obviously is going to become communist because they're supported by the Soviets, while the South is going to be more democratic, supported by the Americans. On June 1950, using Soviet tanks, North Korea is going to launch a surprise attack. And they're going to invade South Korea. At this time, there are only about 500 American troops in South Korea, not very many at all. And so this surprise attack is going to begin. In fact, it catches everyone off guard so much that they're basically able to take over almost all of South Korea. The U.S. uses this as an excuse to begin to increase their military spending. They quadruple their defense spending that year, and the defense spending becomes a key part of the U.S. budget from here on. Even today, the defense budget takes up probably about 25% of our spending in the U.S. And so what you're going to see is that the Korean War is going to begin with an invasion by, or a sending of troops by America and the UN Council. Okay. Truman is going to argue that America must help contain communism in just North America, and so they convinced the UN Security Council to declare war or to invade Korea to prevent the spread of communism. If you remember, the USSR is actually a part of the UN Council and could have vetoed this proposal, but at this moment they are boycotting the council because they feel like they're outnumbered and their voice doesn't really matter, is not being heard. And so, in their absence, this proposal to send UN troops into Korea is passed. 90% of those troops are American, with a total of 520,000 troops being sent to Korea to aid another 590,000 South Koreans there fighting against North Korea. Within 3 months, they're able to push North Korea back over the 30th parallel, but the war is going to continue to escalate. Not satisfied with pushing them to the 30th parallel, MacArthur, who's in charge of the forces in Korea, is going to push them all the way to the border of China. China sees this, though, as an act of war and enters into the war in Korea. They actually send 300,000 troops into battle in November of 1950. MacArthur decides that we need to crush the Chinese now. He thinks it's going to basically end the spread of communism, and encourages Truman to use nukes in China. Truman is not interested in a full-scale war, nor is he interested in launching his nukes because he knows that the USSR will probably retaliate with theirs. And so he eventually fires MacArthur in April of 1951 to try to keep this Korean War limited, not turning it into a full-scale world war. So basically this is kind of how the Korean War goes. Surprise attack in September 1950. They are able to push the South Koreans all the way down into just a little corner of South Korea. And then in October of 1950, Americans and UN troops counterattack and are able to push all the way back to close to the Chinese border. Once China enters the war, though, they then push back in January 1951, a little bit south of the 30th parallel, actually capture the capital of South Korea, which is Seoul. And the war isn't going to end for another 2 years. It's going to end basically in a stalemate. In April 1951, the UN troops are able to push the Korean troops back to the 30th parallel. MacArthur is also fired at this time. And you just kind of get this little stalemate, kind of like the trench warfare we saw in World War I, where everyone just kind of dug in, sitting there waiting for the others to make a move. Several months later, in June, the Soviets propose a ceasefire. Kind of catches Americans off guard, but they accept. And by July 1953, 2 years later, they're able to sign an armistice, basically bringing a truce to the area. To this day, on the 30th parallel, there are fences and barbed wire and lookout posts. Really, the Korean War never officially ended. They kind of just signed a ceasefire saying we'll stop fighting. And so they are very alert along that line still. If you were ever to visit Korea, you could go visit that fence area and check it out. So, how does this affect America? This affects America because about 54,000 American lives are going to be lost in the war. $67 billion are going to be spent. And the Democratic Party is really going to lose popularity and power in America. The Korean War is going to largely be seen as a failure because ultimately we don't gain anything. Nothing changes. There's also an increase of fear of communist aggression. Okay, if they're going to be this aggressive to invade South Korea, they may even be trying to infiltrate the U.S. at this moment. And so this is going to create this hunt for Americans who may have contributed to the communist global growth by leaking secrets to them or just by spying for them. And we will be looking more at what that looked like in our next lecture. Have a nice day.